We can't deny the popularity of The Karate Kid among every generation. While the success of the series today is closely tied to the success of the spin-off series Cobra Kai, it's true that the original film's charm is what has allowed it to remain relevant. However, not everyone was totally sold on it being a perfect franchise. So let's talk about how Ralph Macchio believes that Cobra Kai redeemed the worst Karate Kid movie. Starting off, how has Cobra Kai redeemed this failure from the past? Karate Kid is probably one of the most popular franchises from the 80s. The first two movies were pretty much a hit, but the third installment, The Karate Kid Part 3, was not as well received by audiences and critics. Despite this, the franchise remained popular and inspired a spin-off series called Cobra Kai, which is set decades after the events of the original movies and follows the rekindling of the rivalry between Daniel and his former bully, Johnny Lawrence. In the Netflix series, some familiar faces from the original movies make appearances, including Martin Kove as John Kreese, the ruthless sensei of the Cobra Kai dojo, and Thomas Ian Griffith as Terry Silver, Kreese's henchman. These characters add depth to the show and bring back memories for fans of the original movies. Ralph Macchio, who played Daniel in the original movies, has stated that he believes the Cobra Kai series has been able to redeem the shortcomings of the third movie. Coming up, what was the problem with the original franchise? The first movie from 1984 was an instant hit, especially with younger viewers. It became such a huge success that the studio decided to make not one but 3 more movies. This resulted in the Karate Kid Part 2, Karate Kid Part 3, and the next Karate Kid. All of them received a fairly good response except for Part 3, which was disliked by both the fans and some of the leading actors alike. Ralph Macchio, who played the role of the main protagonist in the first 3 movies, criticized it for being dull. He said that the movie was nothing but a remake of the first part except for all the good parts, and that's a bold statement coming from Daniel LaRusso himself. It is true, though, that for several reasons the movie was unable to reach up to the mark and is probably one of the most forgettable of the bunch. However, we're not sure if calling it uninspiring like Macchio did is fair, especially given that it serves as a pretty solid backstory for the later seasons of the Cobra Kai. But again, that's because of the brilliant writing of the series and not the movie itself. So yeah, there's definitely some truth to Macchio's words. What do you think, though? Next up, what was so wrong with the third part? The plot of The Karate Kid Part 3 is similar to that of the first movie because it follows a similar formula for a coming-of-age story. In both films, the protagonist, Daniel, is a bullied teenager who learns karate from an older, wiser mentor, Mr. Miyagi. Through his training, Daniel learns how to defend himself and also gains confidence and inner strength. Both films feature a climactic karate tournament in which Daniel must face off against a bully from the Cobra Kai dojo. In both films, Daniel triumphs over his enemy and proves himself to be a true karate master. The similarities between the two films may be due to the fact that the writers of the third film wanted to replicate the success of the first movie by using a similar formula. Following up, despite all the similarities, there were still some differences between the two. Starting off with the fact that Daniel's relationship with his mentor, Mr. Miyagi, gets strained, and while some may say that this has happened before as well, the differentiating factor this time is that LaRusso decides to go train with Terry Silver, literally making sure that there's no way back for him. After Daniel gets it going with Terry Silver, he soon realizes that he's using him as a pawn in his vendetta against Kreese. Once he realizes that Mr. Miyagi is quick to take him back, and that shows his character and why audiences have loved him unconditionally throughout the years. He takes LaRusso back when he needs him the most and shows no sign of regret whatsoever. In the end, Daniel must face off against Mike Barnes, a karate champion who is being used by Silver, and triumphs over his enemy with the help of Mr. Miyagi. And that's how the movie eventually gets to its well-deserved happy ending. Let's now learn about how it could go further from here. Season 5 of the series saw almost all of the conflicts of the past come to a satisfactory end. However, there are still some things that still need closure. For example, the rivalry between Kenny Payne and Anthony LaRusso. But this also means that the series is now focusing on newer conflicts instead of older ones that were borrowed from the Karate Kid movies. What started in the 1980s is finally coming to an end, and while many of us may be sad, it's not exactly good to prolong something unnecessarily. Also, we need to make space for newer stories, which makes it a good time to make a new Cobra Kai movie, but more on that later. Finally, it's not just the third part that got a redemption. While it's true that there was the third film that needed the most saving, given the fact that Cobra Kai lives on a lot of nostalgia of the previous films, they also took a lot of cues from other movies as well. One of these is Chosen Taguchi's arc in the series. series. He played the role of a cold and ruthless fighter in the 80s. Chozen was the nephew of Mr. Miyagi's greatest rival, Sato Taguchi, who has transferred all his venom into his student. The second film was extremely violent, owing especially to the way Chozen fought against Daniel. It was so painful that Daniel was left emotionally and physically bruised beyond repair by their encounter. Fortunately though, he made a recovery later on. But the real story begins when Chozen makes a return to the Cobra Kai series, and not as a rival but as an ally. Fans who've seen both his appearances could agree that on his first appearance in the series, it looked like he would again get into his role as the villain, but he quickly submits and even apologizes for the mistakes he made in the past. Not just that he even calls Daniel Daniel-san throughout his interactions with him. This is probably one of the greatest character developments in the series, only coming second to that of Johnny Lawrence in our opinion. Moving on, let's talk about how Cobra Kai was almost made into a movie instead of a series. First up, Cobra Kai had been in the works for almost 2 whole decades. The creators of Cobra Kai, Josh Held and Jon Hurwitz and Hayden Schlossberg, had been considering the idea of a Cobra Kai movie for years, but it never felt realistic to make. In an interview with BuzzFeed, Hurwitz explained that the original plan was to focus on the character of Johnny Lawrence and explore what happens to a bully in their adult life. However, the idea never took off, and it wasn't until the success of the Karate Kid franchise on streaming platforms that the idea of a Cobra Kai series began to take shape. The creators approached Sony Pictures Television with the idea of a Cobra Kai series and pitched the concept of a show that would follow Johnny and Daniel, the main characters from the original movies. As they rekindle their rivalry in their adult years, Sony was interested in the idea and the creators began working on the show, eventually pitching it to YouTube Red, now known as YouTube Premium, which ordered a 10-episode first season. The first season of Cobra Kai was released on YouTube Premium in May 2018 and was a huge success, leading to the renewal of the show for a second season. In 2019, the show was picked up by Netflix and the third season was released in January 2021. Next up, how a risky move resulted in success for the franchise. Cobra Kai has been a huge success since its revival on Netflix. Initially airing on YouTube, the show reunites Daniel LaRusso and Johnny Lawrence and has become one of the streaming service's most popular shows. It can't be denied that even thinking of reuniting Daniel and Johnny on the screen was more than just a bold move, especially when the eventual plan is to get them on the same side. This could have gone horribly wrong, but fortunately, it didn't, and that's made it possibly one of the greatest revival stories of modern-day film and media. Despite its popularity, there was a time when the idea of catching up with the characters from the Karate Kid seemed unlikely. The creators of Cobra Kai were initially hesitant about the idea, but after the failure of another attempt to revive Karate Kid franchise, they decided to take on the project themselves. Finally, the idea of a Cobra Kai movie is still on the table. In September 2022, Sony announced that they were working on a new Karate Kid film. However, the creators of the Cobra Kai series, which is set in the same universe as the Karate Kid movies, are not involved in the project and have no information about the cast or plot of the new film. In a statement on Twitter, one of the creators of Cobra Kai, Jon Hurwitz, said that he and his colleagues would love to make Karate Kid and Cobra Kai movies, but the new film is not from them and is not focused on the Cobra Kai cast. This poses the question of how the movie's going to connect with the existing material, or is it not gonna do that at all? After all, we've seen it happen before in the past with Jackie Chan's movie, but having said that, in a time when Cobra Kai is so popular, it'll be a difficult task to have it reach the same success. Despite all of this, Hurwitz wished the project well. It remains to be seen what the new Karate Kid film will entail, but it is unlikely to overshadow the success of Cobra Kai, which has become a beloved and popular show in its own right. That's a wrap for this video. What's your favorite reclamation in Cobra Kai of the Karate Kid movies? Let us know in the comments below. Make sure to give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel for more videos like this. See you at the next one.